Welcome to April. Welcome to National Poetry Month. Welcome to the Girls Right Now Friday Night Salon. We are so thrilled to be writing and learning and hearing some wonderful wisdom from Jasmine Mans tonight, author of Black Girl Call Home. And we'll get right into her work and journey, and she's going to be reading from the book. And we'll be heading into two beautiful prompts this evening for you to write and share. But without further ado, I am so thrilled to pass it over to Jasmine.
Hello, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Girls Right Now, for having me today. This is actually the first few days of me releasing my book, and you guys are some of the first people I get to engage with and dialogue with. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you tremendously for having me today. My name is Jasmine Mans, and I am a writer. I've been a writer for as long as my memory can retain memory. I remember my first poem, writing it in my house at home with my family in Newark, and my mother telling me to write more. And that's just this one memory that I have. I come from Newark, New Jersey, and I know that a lot of you guys are in New York City, and I went to Arts High School. And I remember growing up in high school, always trying to find resources that allowed me to be a poet. It was the coolest thing to me, and I didn't fit into so many other spaces. But I knew that the thing that made me feel like the most popular girl, the smartest woman in the room, was my ability to rhyme words and my ability to not just rhyme words, but to perform words. I knew that I wanted to use my voice. I knew that I wanted to be on stage, but all the time growing up, I didn't know how. And then when I reached high school, poetry became a thing. And then I had friends who also dwelled in the art form. And I realized that I wasn't alone when I went to somebody and wanted to talk about poems, that wasn't a weird thing. And I found home. And I think that that's one thing that I want you guys to remember in starting this dialogue and this relationship that we're going to have this evening, that poetry helped me find a home. I wanted to find like-minded students, and I found friends, and they were deeply in love with not just poetry but theater. And so I ended up in high school in this clique of friends who were brilliant in their art form, and they were so brilliant and engulfed in their art form that it didn't matter what the rest of the school thought of us. And so we literally would stay. We knew that speech and debate and poetry started at 3 p.m. and we stayed in school until 7:30 because we were so deeply invested in that thing that we loved that it became everything for us. I also came from a family. I have two just beautiful Black parents who were raising me in Newark, New Jersey, who told me you have to figure out how to get to college. And so at a young age, I was trying to strategize, right? I was trying to strategize my way into college. And I don't even know if this is okay to admit, but I didn't have the best grades either. And so I was always trying to find a strategy that allowed me higher education, allowed me a free education, and allowed me to invest in this art form that I genuinely loved. And so all through my high school career, I spent a lot of time strategizing, how do I get myself to college, with parents who didn't have money to pay for my college education. And so my strategy would be the arts. I would use the arts in order to afford myself education. And what I mean by that is I would look at every speech and debate competition that was coming up. I would look at every single poetry program that I could find, and I would sharpen and hone my skills in order to win the scholarship money. in order to not only win the scholarship money, but to win the relationship. And I saw that my teachers and my mentors, I saw that people saw how hungry I was, and that allowed me and granted me mentorship, right? And that mentorship would be the guiding light that would get me so many more opportunities going into college and starting my career as a writer. But I was always so deeply invested in how do I use art to afford me an education? Because that was the thing that I knew, right? That I was better at than everything else. I knew that like I wasn't good at geometry or track, but I was really cool with rhyming rhyming things. And so my mentor would then tell me that if I submitted a portfolio of poetry, right, like a manuscript to the University of Wisconsin, that I'll be put into a cohort of students that they would vet to see if they wanted to give 4-year scholarships. And so by the time I was graduating high school, I realized that there were colleges and universities that were giving out scholarships to poets and to rappers and to students who hone different art forms. And when I found that out, I was like, oh, this is my end. This is the thing. And I would be one of those students to submit a portfolio and get not only just a 4-year scholarship, but a 5-year scholarship to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, to study poetry and performance art, but to major in anything I wanted. And so I say that when you ask me, who am I? Who is Jasmine Mans? I'm a girl from Newark, New Jersey. And I desperately wanted education, and I fell in love with poetry at a really, really young age, and I wanted it to be a utility for forwarding my future at a time when I didn't even know if poetry could be a utility for us, right? So then, like, I would go to college, and at college, I would learn multiple things. Um, I would learn so much about W.E.B. Du Bois and so many things about art functioning as activism, right? And so it's like I'm this girl. I graduate from high school, and I love rhyme and I love words, but now college is teaching me to be intentional. Um, I'm a Black girl on this all white campus at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and it is a complete culture shock. And I'm learning so many valuable things as an African American studies major. And now I'm trying to figure out what is the intention around my work. And I would take multiple classes, right? And one of the classes that I took was a class on into my African American studies, and it was teaching us about the canon, the literary canon. And that was something that I would never ever forget about. There are things, there is a canon, like an actual canon. And there are things, right? Cannonballs being shot out of the cannon. And these cannonballs make huge explosions. And that's a metaphor for like the literary world, right? And so we have the canon where all of the information exists, and what's being shot out of the canon is up to who puts it in the canon, right? And so we often hear in the literary world that there's white literature only in the canon, and that we only listen and read westernized or literature that doesn't speak to who we are, that doesn't speak to the narrative of people of color, to the narrative of people who grew up in places, different places. And if you find, right, a narrative that really speaks to who you are, it's not written by your people. And that's one of the things in college that hit me in the heart and that stuck with me forever. And so my question to myself became like, well, how do you contribute to the literary canon? And if you're going to contribute, right? If you're going to bring your story to the world, what are you going to say? And how do you demand that people listen to you? And so that has been like one of my biggest missions. How do I put my work in the canon? And then what story am I telling? And so that's one of the things that I learned in college, right? The literary canon. That the literary canon is filled with things that don't belong to me. And how do I put myself and my narrative in that canon? And then I learned about just activism, right? What is my job? What do I feel as a writer that is my responsibility to talk about? um and that can be a political thing, and that can be an emotional thing of like, it's my job to talk about my mother. And then I can say it's my political job to talk about the racial climate in America. However, right, we have to figure out, and then honoring that our responsibility and our activisms will shift and change and grow as we grow, and as we learn more. As we learn more, we do more. As we learn more, we alter the things that we know. And so I'm realizing that what my activism is, and my approach and my responsibility is changing and shifting and becoming more of a responsibility as I create work. But when I was in college, I really said a lot thinking about what my responsibility is to my art form. And that made me think about people of color. That made me think about where I came from. It made me think about my body and my mother's body, the body of which I came from. And so, and then I didn't go to school in a place that I came from. I went to school somewhere far away. And it made me look at my home differently because I wasn't there. And it made me think about how others thought about my home. And I was disheartened and heartbroken by how people narrated my home. And that goes back to the canon, that there was somebody talking about my home who was not from my home. And like, imagine somebody who like wasn't from your home or didn't know your mother writing about your mother. And you're like, oh, but you're wrong. And you have us wrong. And so when I saw that and I noticed that, it made me think about, how do I want to narrate my own home and my own experience, right? And I think about W.E.B. Du Bois when he started many conversations around art being propaganda. And when he says that, he means art being used as a utility to make someone else think, or used as a utility to be political, right? To change how people think, to shift the mindset, to shift the narrative that art simply isn't entertainment, but it is to function, it is to create a bigger meaning and to create a deeper conversation about what is happening in the world. And then I studied a lot of Amir Baraka, who is a poet, and Amir Baraka would say that writing is all about two things. And if we can remember these two things, we'll always be brilliant writers. That art is about truth and beauty. That if you can tell the truth and find beauty in it, then you are now doing your job as a writer. And as students so often of the craft, and as students in the United States, we are taught to be a student in order to become a master. And I think that that's something that I learned in college too, that we find these things that we love, and then we try to become masters of those things. And if you think of anything that has ever had a master, that thing was deeply oppressed. But what if we were always a student of the art form? What if we always looked for the art form to teach us something? And one thing that I'm learning is about uh, inspiration, that so often we have different mediums. So this can apply to so many things, right? Like poetry in its bare form is storytelling. And when we talk about inspiration, so often we're waiting for inspiration to hit us because that's the magic of inspiration. That inspiration will just pop up like the tooth fairy. It'll just kind of it'll fly in your room like this little bug and it'll leave a story right under your pillow. You wake up in the morning, you stretch, you get the story, and now you have somewhere to begin and somewhere to go. Like that is inspiration. Um, but when you're a student of the craft, right, and when you're always playing with this beautiful art form of writing or wherever your art form exists, inspiration means finding that beauty in just about everything, finding that peculiar beauty and uniqueness in the everyday functions of life, whether that is the pillow, right? How a pillow can become poetic, or a chair, or how a cup. A friend of mine once said that this red cup sitting on my table is fire. And who are we not to say that it isn't? That it isn't. And so the best part about being an artist and the way that we stay artists forever and the way that we stay brilliant forever is by committing to the inspiration. And I guess when I say committing to the inspiration, I also mean committing to the imagination. And so often as we get older, we don't invest as much in our imagination because we're investing in how to live in this world with all the things that are happening in this world, right? And so I want to remind you to deeply invest in your imagination and how to make things colorful. And there was a time where I wanted to be different from my home. There was a time that I wanted to be disconnected because I didn't know the value and coming from Newark, New Jersey, or the value in Ebonics, or the value in my dialect, and the value of the people that I was raised around that looked just like me. It was so often that I wanted to be different, or I thought that there was more to be. Especially going to college and meeting different people and hearing, right, that outside narrative that already existed in the canon about my home and about the people who look like me. And there was a time where I was invested in being different. And then I realized that the thing that would make me a good writer and a brilliant mind wasn't my desire to be different, but my desire to find what is very valuable. And so I say that to say, think about who you are, how you sound, how your mother sounds, how your father sounds, how you grew up, the dynamics of your home. Think about all of these things that make you uniquely you. And then how do you work every day to put worth in that? How do you work every day to say, like, yeah, my name is really, really valuable. And my last name, my first name and my last name together means something. And where I come from and the way my mother speaks the way my mom cooks food, right? Is important. And the fact that, like, my mother uses aluminum foil, or the fact that we have bags inside of bags in the cupboards, that these are, or the seasonings that we use, that these are the things that bring me value because they are mine, and that someone else's experience does not hold more value over your own. And if we are championing in our own values, right, if we are being a champion of our own experiences, we place value in that, and we allow people like us to come forth and say, you know what, here's my experience too. And then I think, right, so often people say to me in different spaces, I'm not a poet. I'm not interested in poetry. And this isn't as much about poetry as it is about remembering your own story and remembering that your story belongs in the canon, even if you're not ready to tell it. That no matter where we are in our worlds, if we're not ready to write our own story, no matter the circumstance, all of our stories belong in this world because we exist. And when we talk about storytelling, we are talking about writing our existence. And so you don't have to be a poet to write down who you are. You don't have to be a poet to be a storyteller, right? That for a long time, people really, really believed that Nikes could make them fly and jump higher. And it wasn't because Nikes could actually make you fly or jump higher, but it was because the storytelling around it. Maya Angelou said that she walks like she has gold mines in her backyard. And like that is not, we really know that Maya Angelou did not have gold mines in her backyard, but we felt like she did because of the narrative of which she created. And so storytelling exists in so many different spaces. Everything that you ever fell in love with, from the sneakers that we wear to the t-shirts that we wear to how we wear our hair, has a story. We've been told, we've been sold a story around so many different things. That's why we think of Easter bunnies during Easter, and why and so many different things connect to so many others because of the function of the story. And so I always implore you to consider, like, what is your story? And you don't have to write it right now, but as you navigate life and as you navigate your consistencies and the patterns, right? You eat whatever you eat for breakfast every day. If you have bacon and eggs, or if you go to the get a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich from the bodega, that's a part of your narrative, your uniqueness. If your family migrated, that's a part of your uniqueness. And it belongs in the canon because so many other people, right, hold that same story. And for so long, we were told that those stories didn't actually matter. Um, and so, with saying all of that, I wrote this book, right? Black Girl Call Home. And I want to share some poems. And I guess I can tell you just a tad about this book. I wanted to be a writer all my life, and it was my dream to become a writer, to publish a book. And so to have a poetry book is weird, right? It's crazy to like hold your dream in your hand. And I want to tell you that because you'll be holding your dream in your hand in whatever way your dream fits in your hand, right? And that's a real thing. And I implore you, right, to be around people that will nudge you closer to your dream. There are going to be people who are going to be like, that's brilliant, do more of it, right? And then there are going to be people that's going to say like, that doesn't make, I don't get it. And it's not for you to convince people to understand you. It's for you to find those people who have those unreasonable dreams that you have. And the goal about life is to make your dreams become more and more unreasonable. I want to read you some poems that the first poem that I want to read you guys is a poem that I wrote about my home. And so I want you to actually hear how I wrote about my home in one of my poems in my book. And I hope you enjoy it. And I know that a lot of you don't have your videos on, and that is perfectly fine because I feel like we can invest in each other's voices, right? And so I hope that y'all are okay with sharing your voices with me, and feel the vibe of this space. If you have notes and questions that you want to write down, please write them down. If you have thoughts that you want to share, please write them down, because I'm going to read for you guys and we're going to like workshop a little bit. But I really want you to share your poetry with me, and be comforted by the fact that like you don't have to have your camera on. All you actually have to do is share your poem or share your voice. And so not hide, but be comforted by the fact that you can just use your voice in this space, and that this is indeed a safe space and it's ours. And so let's make it ours. Um, the poem that I want to read for you guys is "The 39 Bus Makes Stops in the South Ward." That's the title of the poem. And what's interesting about like writing poems is that you can give your poetry or your story the title that you want to give it. And I wrote "The 39 Bus Makes Stops in the South Ward," right? And so specificity is really, really big for me. But the 39 is the like the number bus. And so like I don't know what number buses that you guys have, but the 39 bus makes stops in the South Ward. The South Ward is a ward in Newark. And so it's similar to saying like the 27 or the 7 or whatever train stops in whatever borough you live in. But it was important for me to be specific with these pieces and these titles so that people from my neighborhood knew that was talking to them, and to make the people that come from my neighborhood feel special. And that's the thing that only you can do if we're really finding the value in where we come from and the language of our own people. Um, the 39 bus makes stops in the South Ward. Gloria Brown lives on South 14th Street in the South Ward. She served as a lunch lady at George Washington Carver Elementary School before she retired. At 12 p.m. every day, she gave Calvin Chambers an extra milk with his lunch because that was my little brother's best friend and our next door neighbor. She feeds Calvin Chambers until he is old enough to go to high school. His older brother, Al Tariq, died somewhere in a high-speed police chase. His funeral was held at Cotton. Bergen Street stands like an old man who was an artist back in the day, but has since painted his kidneys a whiskey color. Around here, you don't need to be Muslim to say Assalamu alaikum, because when you walk into King's restaurant, there'll be a 4'11" Black woman who will ask you for your God and your order, and she don't care if you've made up your mind. You have 10 seconds to respond. Assalamu alaikum, my sister. I'll go with catfish, cheese, eggs, cheese grits, wheat toast with butter and jelly, and an uptown, please. I come from a city that always had enough home to come home to. A city that sometimes only responds to its Muslim name. A city that rolls its eyes and holds its babies tight on the 27 bus because there's gonna be 4 more months before mama gets a new car. So back door bus driver, open the back door, we got places to go. The Source of Knowledge bookstore be the only Black bookstore downtown, and they'll tell you about Broad Street before all the white folks got here. It is summer 2020, and all of my parents' Black kids graduated from college. They keep their degrees in the china cabinet. And when they cook, they wear those "My baby went to a good school" t-shirts. There is a mother in the West Ward praying her child through college, and sometimes she'll sing it, and other times she'll scream it. But that prayer is going to last her all of the days of her life. And the water ain't clean here, but Auntie Joyce is, and she been clean for a minute now. She got an apartment and she sees her grandbabies every week. And the Leslie Street Block Association still has block parties. They be a group of old Black folks who never got too scared of their grandbabies to celebrate them or to pray for them. So Miss Shorter is going to have a cookout. Uncle Charlie is going to have a cookout. Keisha going to have a cookout. And you ain't going to worry about the roaches because mama said everybody is going to stay in that room and she don't want to hear nobody breathe, lift a finger, or move a muscle until she says so. And the street is going to be blocked off, and the city is going to sing, and Nana going to listen to trap music because all of her grandbabies are in the same backyard at the same time. And when the electric slide comes on, the people will dance, and your daddy going to show up, and he going to bring you your new bike, and he going to promise to never leave. And Nana Nana made potato salad, y'all. She made potato salad and she mixed it with her whole arm. And it's going to be 8 p.m. until the sun comes up. So you better stop by here. You better stop by here now and you better come get you a plate. So that is the poem that I wrote about Newark and about my city. Yeah, like snaps. I love it. It was something that I wanted people to feel good about. It's something that I wanted to feel the rhythm, people to feel the rhythm of, that I wanted to talk about. Like when I think of Newark, I think of my mother and I think of my grandmother, but I also think of the Leslie Street Block Association that has block parties every week, and that how my neighborhood in the middle of the ghetto is still committed to having a block party and having girls play double dutch in the summer, and that the block doesn't have a lot of money, but they still round up cash to give out scholarship dollars to all the kids in the neighborhood who are going to college, right? And and that there is a King's restaurant up the street, and only Muslim women work in it, and there is no pork sold at the restaurant, and you do walk into that restaurant and you walk in on your best behavior, and like these are and the Bergen Street stands like an old man who was an artist back in the day, but has since painted his kidneys a whiskey color. That speaks to even the roughness, right? Of like Bergen Street is a street and it stands like an old man. So it stands a bit weak, that the street is not even the same, but who was an artist back in the day, who was a nice young man back in the day, but has since painted his kidneys a whiskey color, meaning that this street isn't as strong as it was before. Or saying things like, the water ain't clean here because the water ain't clean, right? But my aunt is, and she's been clean for a minute now. She got an apartment and she sees her grandbaby every week. That is what we say when we mean truth and beauty. That is truth, but it's beautiful here. And that's what I wanted to peel at when I spoke about where I came from. And right, and as we grow and as we discover more, the narrative of home develops and evolves. And so another piece that I wrote was about Whitney Houston. So on this note about like home, that me and Whitney Houston come from the same city, and that was a space of pride for me. But not only did me and Whitney Houston come from the same city, but my father ran a homeless shelter most of my life, and Whitney Houston was a donor. And so I would like come to the homeless shelter maybe twice a year, and I would see Whitney Houston give these really cool toys like PlayStations and bikes to the children at the shelter. And so Whitney Houston has always profoundly meant something beautiful for us growing up in Newark, New Jersey. And so I wrote this poem. And then when you think about Whitney Houston, when you think about the narrative of this beautiful voice, right? And the way someone can beautifully use their voice and be fearless on stage. And that was something that I always honored, that I saw this woman who was just so whimsical and fearless on stage, and then always came back to her home. So this is Whitney, my fairy godmother. My fairy godmother left today, took up her wings and fluttered away, heard the Holy Ghost hummed a note that rang in her soul, made us believe that there was really something special about a Christmas Eve right in the middle of the ghetto. There may not be anything under this tree, no gifts from three kings, but boy, can that girl sing, holding notes as strong as wooden Baptist church pews, with back pockets holding the Bibles and sins of some men who would scurry away but find an early Sunday morning to come back for them, chasing a sound that could turn a pumpkin into a chariot, made us believe that Cinderella could be a brown girl with a chance at forever if she had a little faith and some measuring tape, a little glitter and a whisper that could grant you one last wish or last kiss. God placed you in the dreams of every brown girl with a fairy tale in her heart and a prayer stumbling up the stairs of her throat with no proof that anyone could ever hear it. When we applauded your name, could you hear it? When you were drowning, could anybody hear it? Why'd you have to be the one to remind us that the clock strikes 12, that we die just too soon, that some girls really end up naked in their bathrooms, that the curtains can just close on a high note, that you can find heaven and a quick fix on the same street in the bricks, leaving you with regrets that would run your throat dry, that would make you take some secrets to the grave, yet can make a flower blossom right up out of concrete. Nork done folded her baby back into its soil, placed you between her palms and a psalm, a black girl with faith as blind as the wind, yet as real as its whisper, forcing us all to remember that God can look at you, sins and all, and still think that you are beautiful enough to die for. Whitney, oh, how I believe in miracles because of you. Promise to tell my daughter about you, about the day that God turned a million mice into men that would carry your body to the gates of heaven. I believe that there is a glass slipper and a pair of wings for you and every girl from Newark with a dream that it is the most beautiful, beautiful ball, beckoning us all to just dance with somebody. I wrote that poem for Whitney, and if you don't know Whitney Houston's voice or her music, go and like dive in it, because I reference so many of her songs and experiences. And growing up, Whitney Houston plays Cinderella. And that's something so big to mention right now when I'm bringing up the canon, right? And people like myself existing in the canon, that Cinderella was not always a Black woman, and her fairy godmother was not always a Black woman. And then when I was a little girl, right? For the first time, Cinderella looked like me, had my skin color, and that was Brandy, and her fairy godmother was Whitney Houston, another woman of color. And so Black girls, right, saw themselves in the canon. And that was a special moment that we rejoiced in, that as a little girl that I rejoiced in. And so I'm saying this poem and I'm saying my fairy godmother, because as a little girl, right, I was deeply attached to a woman who looked like myself being Cinderella, and for her to have a fairy godmother who looked like myself. So when I say my fairy godmother left today, took up her wings and fluttered away, like I'm saying, I'm referencing a moment that even I felt included and valued in the canon through fictional characters, through characters of storytelling that were created. And so if we have more time at the end of our workshop, I would love to perform more for you guys, but I know that we have just a whole lot of things to talk about. And so this is the section of our workshop where we can inhale and then hold it for like 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, exhale. And then I want to sort of like vibe out with you guys, if that's okay, and write with you guys. And so I know that we have some slides that we're about to pull up. Awesome. Okay. And so my book is called Black Girl Call Home. And a part of like a big dynamic of this book is it being an ode to my home and an ode to where I come from. And in poetry, when you hear the word ode, or when you hear ode used in any frame form, they're referencing a love letter in celebration. And so when you think of an ode or an ode poem, whenever you hear that word, think of in celebration of. And so I want you to take the next 7 minutes And I want you to write an ode to your home. And those are the only rules that I'm giving you, because I want you to know this, that poetry does not have to rhyme. It does not have to look a certain way. When you are free writing, you do not have to have a certain amount of numbers or letters. Some poems do and require that, but there are no strict rules that you have to follow other than your honesty. I want you to follow your honesty and your truth. And so, in the most simple fashion, I want you to just free write, right? And write a love letter to your home. And home, right, in my book means a bunch of different things. And so I want to allow you to take the word home and make that mean whatever you wish. And so home could literally mean your house, or it could mean your borough, or it could mean your country. But think about what is home, and then write a love letter, write messaging, a message in celebration of your home. And then I said things to consider, because in writing poetry, that what makes poetry beautiful, what makes writing beautiful, is our ability to be specific, to add specificity, right? And so home has a color. Home might be brown, and home might be brown for me because I'm brown. Home might be a time. It might be because your mother gave birth to your little brother at 7:06 at night, and you smelled the smell and you heard this baby crying, and now that is the time that home represents this time for you. That home is a location. Home might be Brooklyn, but it might be a specific street in Brooklyn. It might be your address, that I can say, like, I went home last night, or I can say I went home to 333 Leslie Street, Newark, and that makes you feel different. Um, what is the texture? Does home feel like leather? Or does home feel like concrete? Like in New York City, you might say home feels more concrete, like the actual concrete on the ground. Voice, that like what are voices that, like, when we say, like, some people say yo, some people say hey, some people say yerd. And so it's just like there are different things that are symbolic of what voice is, what your voice is. That we on the East Coast sound very different from folks in the Midwest, and the Midwest sound very different from folks in California, right? Just like people in California sound very different from people in London. That when I see the word mum, M-U-M, I immediately think of a mother in London or who has a British accent. But if I say mommy, right, I will immediately think about a mother who is in the United States, right? Just like if you say baba, you might think of a father that is on the continent of Africa versus daddy, who might be an American dad, right? But there are little things in voice and narrative in the context of our uniqueness, right? That specify that this is my home. And that's what I want you to do. That I want you to get to a level, right? Or seek for a level of specificity that someone knows that that thing is uniquely and without a doubt your thing, right? And so, in the most simple fashion, without rules, right? Or with the little bit of rules I've given, write a love letter to your home. And when I say a letter in celebration of, and you can say, dear home, or dear Harlem, or dear Newark, or wherever, or dear where you actually, some of you may not even be from these places. You may be from Jamaica, or somewhere that exists outside of the United States. And so feel free to write that love letter to your home. And then think about this slide that acknowledges the things that you can be specific about. And oftentimes I'll write something and then go in and think how can I add specificity? How can I add more detail, more truth, more beauty? And so what you write now is not the end all be all, because we are always working and we are always in progress. And so I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to give you guys 7 minutes. And if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. And I would love for you guys to share with me and to use your voices. And I'm excited to hear what you have. And so enjoy. I won't talk too much more. And I'll come back in 7 minutes to hear your work. All right, well, hold these poems close to you. I want to jump into the second prompt that we're going to do. This prompt is a little bit more creative, and I love things like this because there is no such thing as like following. I mean, there is a such thing as following rules in poetry. Don't let me just keep saying that to you guys. Like, there's no rules because you got haikus and you got sonnets and you have so many different other forms of poetry where they're built upon the rules. However, this is one of those pieces actually that has rules. A list poem, and my one of my poem. My book kind of starts off with a list poem, where it's just a list of things that have things in common, but it's just more a list, and it's a thing that, like, when you don't feel at your best at times, right? When you don't feel like you have that creative edge, that you can list things. You can list seasonings, you can list colors, you can list street numbers, street names, you can list people in your family, you can create a list of patterns. And so think about that poetry follows so many different structures, and that you can find freedom in all of those different structures, that you can make a list in regards to home. When you say, for me, right, it'll be Newark, Whitney Houston, Nana, macaroni and cheese, corn rolls, bodega, CNC sodas, ranch potato chips, nacho cheese, sunflower seeds. Like, those are things that, like, I remember about my childhood growing up. And like, that list is specific to me, and it is just jotting down a list, a to-do list. So one line comes after the next, right? This is a little bit different than I'm asking you to do. So don't be mad with me, guys. And don't and if I confuse you, please ask questions if you'd like. But I want you to give yourself directions home. And so I want you to write these directions as if you would see them on your direction app on your phone, like a list, right, of 10 directions. And so what I want you to do is, whatever you're writing on, whether that's on your computer or on a page, write numbers 1 through 10. Because I want you to honor that it is a list of things. And so you're going to write 1 through 10. And then I want you to give yourself 10 directions to get home. And then I said, directions should be both abstract and concrete. And when I say that, right, abstract is something that you cannot touch. Concrete is something that you can touch, that exists in the real world. Abstract is something that doesn't exactly exist in the real world, right? And so something, or that can't be touched in the real world. So love and happiness is abstract, but this marker is concrete because I am holding it in my hand. Sadness is abstract. Humility is abstract, but my cell phone is concrete because I can literally touch it, right? And so I said, give directions that should be both abstract and concrete, because you can say, turn on the corner of Nana's heart. And that is abstract. You cannot turn on the corner of your grandmother's heart, right? But you can, and so that's an abstract example. And then a concrete example is literally drive up Bergen Street and turn left at University. Those are concrete directions, because those are things that you can do. Those are places that you can actually be in. However, you cannot physically be in a heart, right? And so this is your opportunity to be free and make things up, right? Like, a direction home can be, don't listen to the guy at the corner telling you come closer, continue moving forward, right? That give yourself directions home. You decide where you're starting, right? Because if you're giving yourself directions home, you are not home. But where are you where you want to go home? So you are somewhere where you want to get home. And then what directions will you give yourself? The first direction might say, put your feet to the floor. The second direction might be breathe. The third direction might be whatever comes to be in your mind. But consider a fourth direction or third direction could be like follow your mother's voice, or follow the smell of macaroni and cheese, right? You can't actually follow the smell of macaroni and cheese, right, all the way home, but the abstract understanding, right, of like follow the smell of your mother's macaroni and cheese, right, makes you think about this abstract form of love and of home, right? The smell of home. Home smells like macaroni and cheese, and that lingering smell will be waiting for me. And these are the abstractions, right, that make poetry sound so beautiful. That directions home are not always concrete. It's not just turn left, or in 400 feet you will turn right. That sometimes it is, but in 400 feet, what else can you do? When you turn left, what are you bumping into? Are you picking somebody up on the way? And there's so many places that you can go with this. However, I get carried away in talking, but I'm gonna let you guys write. And on your list of 1 through 10, give yourself 10 free directions from both the technical end of like, you got to get home in the car, but also in your heart. How do you get home? So have fun, and I'll get back with you in the next 5 minutes. like think about like always giving yourself directions home. Like these are your directions for right now at this point in your life. And like, what if each year, right, you sat down on your birthday or the day before or after your birthday and gave yourself new directions, and you watched how your directions for life shift for you, because you'll realize as you age, you'll have to protect yourself differently. Your armor becomes different. Your love and your language for yourself becomes different. And I would love for you to see how your work and your writing and your desire for protection and to get home evolves. And so keep these things close to you, because this is gorgeous writing, and allow yourselves, right, to be inspired by the writing that you are hearing from your peers, because it is tremendous. And think tremendously about your work and about your own journey, and about how do you get home mentally, physically, how do we get ourselves home? And Black Girl Call Home was that for me, trying to find my way home and thinking that home could be multiple different things, that sometimes home is your body, sometimes home is your house, sometimes home is your hood. And when you are acknowledging all three of those different dynamics, getting home might take different routes. And so today was just like one simple route of getting home, what we wrote. And there might be many, many other routes. And so thank you for your beautiful writing. The next thing that we're going to do before we have to go, which makes me truly sad because I love talking to you guys and I truly feel like we're in this together. And thank you for being here with me and fellowshipping in this workshop with me. The next, I think, 10 minutes, we're going to spend chatting. And if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. You can unmute yourself and we can dialogue a bit. But this space is truly ours. And so I would love for the next 10 minutes or so, maybe 7 minutes, to just answer whatever questions that you may have in regards to something that we did today or something about writing or myself. I would love to dialogue with you. So throw some questions in the chat or ask them aloud if you have them. Who inspires me? Toni Morrison inspires me. Some of the work of Dr. Seuss that is not racist inspires me. Just the world that he builds in his writing. I'm inspired by Carl Walker, who is a visual artist. There are just so many people that inspire me. Ocean Wong, if you're looking for an author who is both a novelist and a poet, his book On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous really inspired me to honor home and to honor my own mother. So like, if you're just looking for text that acknowledges the mother-child relationship and immigration, that is a beautiful dynamic story. And then young people inspired me. Like I watched my 6-year-old cousin play with Legos, and he built Legos way better than I built them. And I was trying to figure out for the life of me why his Lego building was better than mine. And it's because his imagination was more thorough. And I realized that children should always be around because they have stronger imaginations than we do. And so let's keep young people around, and let's keep true and hold true to just our young and youthful imagination. Um, how has my style of poetry transformed is a question that Danielle asked. And when you know more, you do more. When you know more, you act better and you do better. And so as I learn more, the things I learn make it into my work. As I build better routines, I become a more sharper individual. And so I think in two parts, that's what it is. When you learn more, you want to share more of what you learn. And when you become more disciplined, you become a sharper individual in order to be able to publish publicly share and create things, and be accountable for things. How do you edit a poem? Is a question that Maya asked, and I edit poems differently based on the poems, right? There was a poem that I wrote recently that took me 4 months to edit because I was really nervous. The topic was about a time that happened in Black history, and I didn't want to mess it up, and I was doing so much research, and so that editing process was very different from some of the poems that I've written about love. And the poem was just based on my emotional capacity at the time. And so the editing of a poem is very much so connected to what kind of poem you are writing. And oftentimes I often sit with friends in writing workshops, and we build our own Zoom writing workshops where we edit each other's work and ask questions about each other's work. Um, how do you get over writer's block and lack of inspiration is a question that was asked by Parometa. I know I said that wrong, and I hope that you can correct me. But the way you get over writer's block is not forcing yourself to write. And I like to use the metaphor of cooking, right? Where when you're hungry, you don't walk up to the stove, right? When you are hungry, you think about what you want to eat. And then you go into the refrigerator and you think about if you have those things to cook. And then you pull out the ingredients and you prepare. There's preparation if you don't have the ingredients, right? You have to go to a store or multiple stores to buy those ingredients, right? But there is preparation that goes in before you actually walk up to the stove. And so when we put pen to pad, that is us walking up to the stove. And the question is, did we do the preparation? Did we gather the tools? Did we gather the ingredients? And oftentimes we want to walk up to the stove and we're like, well, why am I not cooking? And it's because you didn't actually gather your ingredients and prepare and put them on the stove. Like, do you know, like you have to spend time chopping onions, right? To make them fine enough for whatever meal that you are cooking. Like when you even specifically talk about an onion is chopped based on the meal that the onion is being put in, right? And then even when you are chopping an onion, the way you chop an onion, right, is dependent on the knife that you are using. That if you want to chop something really fine and small, you're using a bigger knife. And like even your knives are different for chopping your onion that's going into your bigger meal. And that's just one part. You didn't even get to the meat. We're on the onion right now. And so that is the level of detail that we conspire around when we are building a poem. And so search for detail. Like you might say, like I'm not inspired by anything and I have writer's block, but what if I wrote about my hair? How long does it take my hair to grow? And when did I start disliking my hair? And why is other people's hair different from my hair? And so now you have questions and you have things to research, and they may not have been the things that were pressing against your heart, right? But there are things that allow you to be exploratory, and that is a big deal. And being a student of your craft is being able to explore things and find things that you love and things that you didn't necessarily think you cared about. Like and when you really have writer's block, my answer to getting over writer's block is go on Netflix and watch videos on like the ocean or animals. And it is the most poetic. What happens in the ocean seems to be like the most poetic thing ever. And so think about what's going on in the ocean. It's super interesting. Um, have you ever been a mentor for young writers? Absolutely. That not only am I a mentor, but that there are so many brilliant mentors around that may exist in your neighborhood, that may exist in your space. And so I'm a mentor, and I know so many brilliant mentors. There are mentors that I believe come out of Girls Right Now, and mentors that come out of so many of our youth literacy programs that are brilliant. And so I think I'll answer one more question. Um,
Summer, that's you.
Okay, can you hear me?
yep.
Okay, I want to start off by just thanking you for paving your own career. I mean, the way I came to find you was actually very intentional. And I noticed that you were putting your artwork on things that people could wear. So I want to thank you for just paving a very unique career that's unique to you, but then also for sharing yourself and your space and your words. So I'm gonna ask like a two-tier question, and you can answer it in any way that you so choose. So one of the things I'm inspired by this particular workshop is that there's so many people that are creating arts, right? But yet we live in a society in which really it's like a pyramid. And so there's very few spots for people to like publish work. So I guess my question is, given that we are in this landscape, what advice would you give to people who want to continue to create art without feeling discouraged by the opportunities that may or may not be available to them? So that's one part of the question. And then the second part of the question that's related to this is, you've been writing for a while now, like since high school, right? So at what point did you start to realize that you were getting good? And
Mm.
so those, I feel like those two things are kind of related. So your turn.
Right, I got you. So truth be told, I was in college and I had a mentor who was also my professor in college. And I wanted to write a book so bad. And, hold on, first, I wanted to write a book. And there was a poet mentor in my community, and I kept sending her my book. And I wanted her to publish me because she had a small publishing company. And I kept sending it to her, and she never responded, and she never responded. And she would say, resend it, and I would resend it, and she never responded. And I just really began to understand that she wasn't interested. And it kind of broke my heart. But I still had this manuscript, and a woman that I really, really loved and respected was not interested at all. So then I was in college, and one of my college mentors was like, I have a like small publishing house and I would love to publish your poetry. And I was like, wow, like this lady didn't even want to publish my work. She didn't even look at it. And now my college professor wants to publish me. And then my college professor one day told me that she didn't want to publish my work anymore. And so I'm just like, what's like, I'm never going to get published, and everybody's publishing a book, and these weren't big publishing deals, right? I'm not talking about big publishing. I'm talking about we're in college or about to graduate from college, and you have mentors that started these small publishing houses or have enough collateral, right, to support you. And so I already went through two mentors who were like, never mind. And then I was like, well, what do I do? And then I got a call from an artist who was a rapper, and he was a famous rapper. And he was like, I found your work. And I don't know how this famous rapper, I won't say his name, but I don't know how he found my work. And then he became like a big brother to me. And he would start calling me almost every day. And he would call me his little sister, and he'd be like, what do you need? And one day I was sobbing over the fact that I I couldn't get a book. No one would publish this work. And he was like, I'll publish it. And so what he meant was like, he would find me some dollars, and he would find me an editor who would work with me. And I didn't get a publishing deal. I got an opportunity to print my book. And when I got the opportunity to print my book, I brought 300 copies of it. I would always buy enough copies that I could afford at the time. And so if I had $300, if I had $500, I would spend that money and I would buy as many copies as I could print, and I would leave them in my house. And then I would call the bookstores on campus and I would say, like, can you take 5 of my books and hold them in your store? And then I would put it online and people would buy it online, and I would be shipping out books after class. But it was my small little business. Jasmine had 300 books, and Jasmine had to sell those 300 books. And I put them in my bank account so that I could sell another 300 books. And so when you don't feel like there is a commercial opportunity being provided for you, you build that opportunity out with the resources that you have. And so it might not be like before, right? That like this has Target on it, right? But it's like before it was like dorm book poetry. And that's like, that was my resource and that's what I worked with. But I wasn't going to not do anything until this moment came, that actually this moment gave me this moment. And that's what you got to realize. And truth be told, I'll actually show you my first book. Hold on one second. So this was actually my first book that I printed in college, and you can see like it's way smaller, it's way different, but some of these poems are actually in this book. But this is the book that I was able to afford on my own, and this book gave me this opportunity to write this thing. And so when you don't feel like the outer world or your commercial or that bigger opportunity has been graced upon you, what can you build within your own resources? And then there was a second question that you had that I forgot.
Thank you for sharing that. My second question was, you've been writing for a while, and so at what point did you start? At what point did you find yourself getting good? You.
Oh, I don't think I'm good. That's the thing. Like, I don't think you just told me I was good. Like I'm writing to be good. Like we're all writing to so that we can be good at this thing. And so I'm pretty sure I might look at this right in like the next 20 years and be like, that was the most horrific writing I've ever written in my life. But I don't think I'm good. I think that I'm telling a story and I'm going to tell the next story. But people will tell you you are good. People will look at your work and say, that sounds like my story. And I think those are the things that gratify us and that kind of make us feel like valid, right? In our experience when like my grandmother read the book and she cried, and I read my grandmother one poem in particular that like started my book, and she cried because I wrote it the exact way my mother told it. And I felt so accomplished because every time my mother gets the opportunity, she'll tell people about how I was a colic baby and I cried. I could cry for 8 hours straight. And she'll always say the differences between me and my brothers. And so my book starts off with me describing me and my brothers the exact way my mother describes us all the time. And I knew that I did that successfully when I captured her voice precisely. And so success and goodness will feel different. You might write a poem for someone you're in love with, right? And they might feel that love that you were trying to exude, and you're like, I did it. I did it. And so I'm grateful, right, to have had this opportunity to be here with you guys and to talk and fellowship with you guys. I hope that this experience was fruitful for you as it was for me, because I'm very much so excited and flabbergasted by some of the writing that you've shared with me today. And I'm just simply humbled by just having the opportunity to share Black Girl Call Home and to share my work, because it's honestly some of the first few days where I'm sharing my work, and I'm nervous but honored to share it with you guys. And so from the bottom of my heart, I thank you guys for having me. And I thank your staff and this team that has prepped me and supported me. You guys are fabulous. And I wish you all joyous reading and writing experiences, and love and happiness and safety.
I mean, truly, I'm going to say one thing. You're not just a brilliant writer, you are a brilliant teacher. I will reference this and everything you have said tonight for years to come, and I'm sure many of us will as well. Please, everyone, feel free to unmute yourselves and give a huge round of applause, cheers, all the claps, love in the chat for Jasmine. Oh my
Thank
God.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you.
My
Thank
heart is so
Love, 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 love.
As you see here on the screen, feel free to follow her on Instagram and Twitter. And we've dropped some links over into the chat to purchase the book, which I know I will be doing immediately. Um, a few more little updates here, but we do also want to acknowledge our essential workers and everyone out there advocating for justice, community organizers, all of those like real people doing the real work out there in this pandemic, which is hopefully wrapping up now that we are soon to be eligible for vaccines. So sending love, sending cheers to them as well. And also a little bit of plugs for Girls Right Now. If you are here tonight and this is maybe your first introduction to our organization, welcome. You can learn more at girlsrightnow.org, or you can give a donation at /give or /circle if you want to join our circle and get some special benefits. And if you are inspired by what you've seen tonight and are interested in becoming a mentee or mentor, you can check out girlsrightnow.org/enroll. Enrollment is about to open up. And we are always growing our community. We are based in New York City, but as you see now, we are virtual and we're planning to stay virtual through the next program year in some forms. So please stay in touch with us. You know where to find us on social, you know where to find our calendar. My heart is so full heading into the weekend, and I just can't thank you all enough for being here tonight and sharing in this experience.